Fasten your seatbelts, hold on tight. You're in for one crazy ride tonight on the Josh Nolan Full Throttle Racing Show. #1 on Facebook.
Gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts, hold on tight. You're in for one incredibly awesome and amazing ride tonight on the Josh Nolan Full Throttle Racing Show. #1 on YouTube. We have a returning guest with us tonight. We have car owner Febe with us, talking to her about what happened to her team at the Tulsa Shootout this year and what she's got going into the 2022 racing season. So Febe, how was your Tulsa Shootout for you guys?
So it actually really well. So it started kind of rough when we got there because a few days prior we actually had a little bit of an issue in the shop and one of the cars caught on fire. So we had to quickly kind of get things together and move forward. But in terms of our week out there, went really, really well. We had 4 cars out there. We ran in every single class. We had a class car, which was Stone Sharp, ran in that class. And then we had Lane Height in the Outlaw non-wing car. And then we had Brantley Henderson in the junior car and Parker Buff in the restrictor car. So the 2 A-class cars, they ran wing and non-wing, or we ran, wing and non-wing. Both non-wings, sorry. We had both non-wings for Stone, and Stone actually put both of them into some really later on mains, which meant that he didn't have to run a bunch of the lower mains. So we were really close there. We missed both of them by just track timing. So we had a stock motor in Outlaw class, which can be a little bit of a disadvantage. And unfortunately, the track was ready for a big motor. So we were kind of in a situation there where we couldn't really do anything about it. And then when he was in the A class, kind of the same situation. It was just all around the bottom and we just didn't have anywhere we could really advance. And then Parker actually made it the furthest. He put it in the last chance qualifier, which means it's the absolute last chance to make it into the feature. And we ended up missing it by 1 spot. So we were really close. So for me, it was like, oh my goodness, the first time out here, I've never taken cars out there. I've always gone with somebody and helped. So it was really cool to kind of be like, oh, this is possible. So, and then we had the junior out there and it was his first time really at a big event like that. So he was a little overwhelmed. And he kind of told me, I remember going, oh man, there's a lot of cars. I mean, the junior classes never had more than 20 around Indiana, and they had over 200. So he was a little, I think, nervous and maybe a little intimidated, but yeah, he did pretty good too. So we had a really, really good first time experience as a team going out there, and I couldn't be more prouder than anybody, than all of them. They all did really, really well.
Okay, so Febe, now that the Tulsa Shootout has wrapped up, what is your next big race that you guys getting ready to do?
So we are getting ready to actually this weekend head to open test weekend. So 24 is doing like a test and tune kind of.
Okay.
They just leave the track open from noon until whenever cars kind of stop going out, or Jim decides that it's time to go home. And we're going to do that this weekend. And then next weekend is actually our first race out. And it's basically just a season opener at 24. But the very first big race that we're doing is in the A class. It's what's called the A class Clash at 24. It's a 10,000 to win race. So that'll just be one of the cars that last year. And then the very first big restrictor race that we're going to do is actually a race that I'm putting on in June. It's called the FWR Give Back. It's just a night focused on the kids because a lot of them get to sit and either watching a mom or dad, or they have to sit out because there are 10,000 to win races for the other people, for the other classes. So they don't really get the opportunity to necessarily go, hey, it was about me tonight, right? So that's kind of my goal. And so I'm excited, but that's actually the first big race for them. So there's quite a few this year, but those two I would say are probably the biggest ones that I'm looking forward to.
Okay, so the FWR shootout, right, or give back. So do you have a lot of people that are sponsoring that race to help you out with that give back race?
So currently I'm working on some sponsors. I'm looking to kind of focus it around not so much giving them, say $500 in cash, which is what it is to win. It's 500 to but I'm more focused on being able to kind of say, okay, you won $500, which typically goes back to mom, dad, or the team, or whatever the agreement was. But my goal is to kind of provide an opportunity for them to take home some cool stuff. So they've never gotten to get checks before, at least not at 24. So I'm gonna have the checks like the sprint car drivers get with their name on them and the amount that they won for first, second, and third. And then I also have like gift cards or kids are like really into this thing called Roblox now.
Okay. Yeah. I know what I've heard of Roblox. Yes.
So I want to have like gift cards like that to kind of give back to them. So that's kind of what I'm working
now. Definitely.
Kind of the racing community to donate to or to sponsor to go out and purchase those things. So that way they can get something that's not necessarily going to go back to mom and dad. It's going to go for them to play or for them to go for their race car or something like that. So the focus more than just focused on necessarily like the money, making money off of it for them, taking it back to mom and dad. It's more like making it about them and them getting to be the spotlight for the night.
Okay. So Febe, when it comes to your drivers, your new drivers that you got coming in, Brantley and the Hendersons, definitely, how's it taken Brantley a little bit to get used to giving you feedback as far as what's going on with the race car on the track?
So there's actually a couple more than just Brantley coming in this year. We've got Brand, Lucas, and Liam Ball, and then David Camden. So there's 4 new drivers, and I haven't gotten to work with three of them very much because they are new this year. Never worked with me before. Other occasionally in Quarterman, just when I was around. So from them, I'm not exactly sure how the feedback's going to go. But in terms of Brantley, he is a lot younger, so he's only 8. So it is hard to get that feedback from him. But we have kind of focused in on that with all of them. I really worked on that with Parker. I was like, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and how does it feel in your hands? And so we would try and figure out the best option for them to communicate the information back. And my brother's actually the same way, and he's 16. He's still sometimes like just has a hard time explaining what it is. But knows, and they all do. They all know what it is. It's a totally different feeling sometimes. So you're like, it's, and they get to moving their hands. I notice that the most. And then you're like, okay, well, if your hands are doing this, it's not really actually tight. It might be loose, or vice versa. And sometimes understand that. So we definitely put in on the relay back and forth.
So has Parker come a long way since last year that you helped him out going into this year?
I would say that Parker has come a very long way, and I'm very, very impressed. Actually, he got to take his race car out for the very first time at DeQuoin, Illinois, 3 years ago, and it was his car. It wasn't anybody else's. They purchased it over the winter, and then I've helped kind of put it together this winter before DeQuoin. And I would say, based on that, watching him hop in a car that it's very similar to the one that he had, but it's not that car. He adjusted, amazing. He did awesome. It was a new track, new car, and he definitely, you could definitely see the hard work that he put in over the summer was definitely paying off.
Okay. So now, Febe, so how's the maintenance going with the cars, with the new drivers? Are you pretty much caught up with everything so they're ready to go out and test, or?
Yeah, so we're pretty close. Unfortunately, with all of the shipping issues and the supply issues, it's kind of hard to be on top of some of the stuff. So we actually have one car that's actually waiting on injection right now, and it's been waiting since November, and they have not had the pieces to actually finish it up. So unfortunately, one of the cars is kind of like in the middle of being completed, but most of them are ready to go, and we've actually been driving around in the front yard. We have like out in front of the shop, we have like a pretty big open area, so they've been testing and practicing using the clutch and learning how to kind of control the race cars.
So Febe, I know you're looking forward to the racing season getting fully underway here shortly. So I'm looking forward to seeing how your drivers all do this year. It's going to be pretty spectacular to see all them. So have you picked up some sponsorship for their cars going into this year?
Not too much. I've been working on it. It is very hard to actually get people to want to sponsor right now.
Yeah.
Not knowing what's going on, but hopefully in the near future. Right now we're just kind of focusing on making sure everybody ready to go.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So Febe, how's school going for you?
I actually get ready and graduate in May, so I'm almost there. I have like 4 weeks left. So
4 weeks left?
Yeah, 4 times down to Indy left. So we're getting there.
We're getting there. Okay. So Febe, so the drivers are adjusting rather well as far as Parker. And your new drivers are going to probably adjust very well too. It just takes a little while for them to get used to their cars and stuff. So did you guys didn't have any mechanical issues down at the Tulsa Shootout at all, or?
We had one car that we had a problem with. We had a wire come out of the ECU while we were down there. So it kind of took us actually took us about a day to figure out exactly what was going on. But from there, we didn't have any problems really. Actually, we only tore up one car while we were out there, and it was only a wheel, so it wasn't too bad. So it wasn't too bad.
So what was the track conditions like down there for the Tulsa Shootout? Was it pretty, is it kind of played by the day and by the cars out there, or?
Yeah, so the first day, it's typically, at least this year, it was, I would say, pretty good. It kept moisture, but by the last day, yeah, they were putting water on every time cars were on the track because they just couldn't keep up with it. But it's definitely a lot smoother of a racetrack than most that we see. Okay. And it's, I think as long as they don't have it around the bottom, which it can be a struggle, depending on the time during the day, it's actually a pretty good race because it's a little bit bigger, especially for like the juniors. It's a lot, it's actually bigger for them. So they put on a pretty good show.
I know last weekend they the micro sprints, a lot of them were out at Clyde Martin Raceway out in Pennsylvania, kicking off their season out there, and they said that track was just wow. It was started off really good, but by the time feature come, it was disastrous. They had 3 different classes of micro sprints out there, and 2 of the main classes had 20 to 24 cars starting, and only 5 or 6 finished out of the. Yeah, they tore up a lot of cars.
Yeah, and I think the struggle sometimes is like certain tracks will put new dirt down, which is great. Yeah. But like I know around here that the guys that work on the tracks around here, they really, really focus on getting it mixed in, getting it good to go, getting it so that way we don't see huge ruts because the dirt's new and old.
Yeah.
So I think if that doesn't get done to a good amount, then you do see a track that's pretty rough, and then it is hard to not tear up race cars, whether it be because of potholes in the track or just season opener and everybody's got the itch to race. So Febe,
do you miss being behind the wheel at all?
On occasion I do. I'm gonna race a couple times this summer. I look at it as like I'm good at driving, but I'm really good at wrenching on them. So sometimes when I'm sitting back and I'm like, oh, I kind of miss it, I also sit back and go, okay, well, here I am. All these people are doing, Parker's doing really good. Hopefully, we get Lucas and Liam and Dave. It's Parker. Brantley's really, kind of advancing in his knowledge, being that he's only 2 years into this. Yeah. So it yes, but no, because I get so much satisfaction and feeling of reward when I see them get out of the car and they're happy and they have the smile that they're supposed to have when they get out of a race car.
Oh yeah. So owning a team, is that, I bet you there's a lot of times you come home with a headache and you're like, hey.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not necessarily like from being at the track or like being busy, but sometimes you have to come up with a new way to communicate with the kid and have to learn what makes them go, what makes them want to race, what drives their passion to be in a race car. And sometimes for some kids, it's cool. It's something different than what their friends do. But for other kids, it's like, that's what I want to be when I get older. I want to be Kyle Busch or Jeff Gordon or whoever
yeah.
So you just have to kind of figure out what their itch is and then kind of hone in on it. So sometimes, yeah, it can be like, oh my goodness, you're like wanting to hit your head against the wall because you're like, man, I just can't get through to them. And then other days when they come off the track and they got that one thing you were trying to explain to them, you're like, okay, that was rewarding. And it makes up for all the time that you're like, oh my gosh. So
yeah. So was there times last year with Parker that you were just like, man, this is a bad weekend. This is going to be a bad weekend.
Yeah, we definitely had our beginning of the year actually, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was rain, and a lot of the times we didn't get a good weekend because we'd get like the heat races. So he really just needed really good laps, and he wasn't getting them. So for me, it was like, here we are at the track, and he was still struggling with the same thing. And so finally, we sat down with him, and his dad and I sat down and were like, hey, if you want to race, you want to be in a race car, it doesn't matter where we are, what we're doing, you have to try to figure it out. You can't just go out there and make the same 20 laps for 10 weekends in a row and hope for a different outcome.
Yeah.
And yes, it was a little bit of a challenge the first couple races. But once he kind of got in the swing of things and kind of understood, what we're saying, you get 20 laps, you don't get 200, you get 20 laps out. And really, you only get 5 in hot laps to figure it out because what you get the track, and that's it. So it's a big learning curve, and that was something I had to learn to teach as well. It was hard I understood what I was talking about to them, but bringing it to a level that was like, okay, don't focus on what the track's doing right this second. Let's focus on what you have to do to adjust to what it's doing.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah.
So, go with your team, do you get, is it kind of stressful to go to sponsorship meetings and stuff like that and try and get sponsorship?
So my goal this year is to actually kind of have the kid, not for me, but for themselves, have the kids go and get themselves a sponsor. Okay. So if them in the door with a company or even a customer that they've encountered at maybe their parents' business, if that's the kind of the relationship their parents have or business that their parents have, gets them in the door so that they can have a conversation. And then when they have the sponsor for themselves, then it benefits them in the long run. So I kind of push them to do it. And fortunately, I've had a lot of people around me that I know that are interested in sponsoring racing, and they don't really have anybody to sponsor. So they're like, oh, here, let me buy you guys a couple sets of tires, or let me buy a few front axles. I've had that opportunity. So for me, I've had some interaction. I do have to say though, if I'm going to go talk to somebody who's like more than a small business, something that's a little bigger, I do get a little intimidated, and it's like, okay, how do you start the conversation? And with her name's McKenna Hassey. She's a wing sprint car.
Oh yes.
For a bunch. She does a lot of her own sponsoring. So she runs her own team solely off sponsorship. So I talked to her a bunch too about, how to have those conversations and who to talk to and what's the best way to get in the door.
Okay. So, Febe, good luck to you this racing season. It's going to be pretty cool to see all your drivers out there challenging the tracks and taking on the tracks, and hopefully get you a bunch of wins. That would be really cool, and get you a really good point finish for your team also.
Yep. I would love to at least have more than 9 feature wins. That's the goal. So as many as possible, but more than more than last year. So.
Oh, yes. So, Febe, I want to thank you for being on the show with me tonight, talking to us about your race car drivers and talking to us about the new ones a little bit. So, before I let you go, how was the dads to talk to you about when you go to approach them to be a part of your team? The dads.
So I've actually been really, really fortunate so far. People have kind of came to me. I've sat down and talked to I talked to Dale, for example. He was like my first go-to person to talk to about this. And he was really easy to talk to. But in terms of having conversation about, the gains that they get from it or cost or anything like that, they've been really easy to talk to, especially because they're really interested in trying to find something for their kid to try out. That's the that's the biggest thing is, especially at 11 and 12 years old,
Oh, yes.
ask them, well, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And a lot of the times they're like, I don't know. And so I give them the opportunity to say, okay, well, let's try this without, investing and having something that we have to get rid of if you don't like it. So it definitely has its perks that I've had people come to me so far. Yeah. The conversation with Dale was very, very smooth, and an open door kind of conversation. We definitely, passed ideas, and then he called me the next week and he's like, hey, yeah, we're definitely in, but here's some ideas, this might make it better. And so it's definitely, I learned from each one of them how to make the next person better in terms of the so it's definitely been a learning curve for me.
Okay. So Febe, thank you again for being on the racing show with me tonight. Giving us an update as to what was going on with you at the Tulsa Shootout and what your season's starting to look like and how prepared you guys are ready to go take the track, and talking about your new drivers. So I'd like to thank you, Febe, for being on the racing show with me tonight. I will call you in a little bit to thank you in person. I know we had a little bit of technical glitch, but yeah, that goes. Oh, and you know what we forgot to do, Febe? Whoopsie. I forgot to press record. Oh, snap.
It's been recorded.
It is okay. Okay, we did. Okay, so Febe, thank you again for being on the racing show with me tonight. I will call you in person to thank you shortly. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So, ladies and gentlemen, out here in Racing Show Land, let's get a little racing news update. Denny Hamlin pulled off the win last weekend at Richmond International Raceway. Dale Jr. is looking forward to getting behind the wheel at Martinsville in a Busch car, and JR Motorsports found out is kind of branching off from Hendrick Motorsports and not going to be associated with Hendrick Motorsports. They're going to kind of do their own thing coming up. So that's going to be kind of cool to see all that. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's a little racing news update for you. Brittany Forrest picked up the win in the Top Fuel Dragsters at the 4-wide drag racing in Las Vegas. And also Erica Enders picked up the win also in Pro Stock out there at the Las Vegas 4-wide Nationals. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, have a good day. Catch you later on another episode of the Josh Nolan Full Throttle Racing Show. #1 on YouTube. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that notification button on my YouTube channel. And you guys have a good day. Oh, and if you guys would like to sponsor my racing show, you can email me at jjnolan151@gmail.com, or you can call and text me at 712-209-7138. Bye-bye.